As we mentioned earlier on our show this evening, social workers are on the second day of an illegal strike. One of the major issues is the number of clients they must work with. The social workers say they're swamped and the people who need their services are suffering.
I'm doing crisis intervention. I don't have the time to plan adequately, to gather my information and to respond rapidly enough when the situation deteriorates. I'm working long hours, including on a norm, I will work an 18-hour day. I will work most weekends to some extent attempting to do the reports or review files, determine what case plans need to be.
There's no such thing as quality of work, not with the numbers that high. The department has run many task forces before. They came up with a figure that of the caseloads that we should handle would be 125. So why do they give us 250, 270, 300, 500, 800?
I enjoy the job, but the caseload size only gives me approximately 4 hours on the average per year per family.
Take a typical case, if we got one of these kids who may be in a crisis situation, that may take up to a week just to confine that individual, get an appropriate placement, make sure that the situation is okay, and that's one case. And in the meantime, the other 40s are ignored.
Joined now by the head of the Social Workers Union. She's at the legislature, Linda Karpowich. How bad is this caseload problem? Does everyone have too much to do?
Throughout the province, there's a number of areas, number of programs that are very stressed. Income security is one area, child welfare is another, services to dependent adults, services to handicapped children. For the most part, those are areas where there's serious difficulties in terms of workload.
Now, do they have too much to do compared with other social workers across the country?
There is some difficulty making the comparisons. For example, in the East, we know that a lot of the child welfare services are provided by boards and agencies. So the comparisons in terms of the kinds of services that are provided by provincial governments, I mean, there are some very real differences.
Linda, what do you want the government of Alberta to do besides hiring twice as many social workers?
Well, I mean, it certainly is one answer to the problem. The other problem is really to address our problems in a meaningful way. The employer needs to come to the table with concrete solutions to the problems. We need some control over workload. We need to have some ability to return work to the employer when we absolutely cannot cope with one more situation.
But do you have any concrete proposals to make to lessen the workload?
Well, of course. I mean, we've talked about putting caps on the amount of situations that can be referred. We've talked about a number of things in terms of even using, you know, trying to enforce the code of ethics for social workers for the different professions. We've talked about leaves when workers become very, very stressed, you know, different things like that.
You mean, in other words, a lot of these are aiming at hiring more people to take care of that workload?
Well, that is one solution that the employer has available to them, certainly. You
don't want another task force study as the government has offered as an olive branch, then?
Well, you know, the government has been studying this problem since at least 1982. They've commissioned reports, they've paid for reports. Their last report is very, very recently, within the last 6 months. I believe that is still even in the last phase of its completion. The employer has already established workload standards.
What would it take then to get you back to the bargaining table to end this strike?
What we need from the employer is a commitment that they will implement solutions and not study them.
All right. Thank you very much, Linda.
You're welcome.
Joining us now is the Deputy Minister of Social Services, Stan Remple. Mr. Remple, thanks for coming in tonight to talk to us. Even the government agrees that social workers have too much on their plates. Why can't you do something about the issue of workload?
I don't see this as an unresolvable problem at all. Frankly, I see it as largely a function of how we use our resources, and then in particular as it relates to the particular loads we assign to individual staff.
All right. If it's not a problem, if it then is something that can be resolved, what's keeping you and the union away from the bargaining table?
I don't know. I find it difficult to, in a sense, comment on it because it's an adversarial kind of process, and I don't like doing that with my staff. Having said that, I think we are in a position to follow through on a lot of work we've already done during the past year and a half. And we would like to continue this dialogue, be it at the table or be it off the table.
But I think one of the criticisms that the union has brought up is that there's been too much talk and there hasn't been enough implementation, that in fact they want to see some concrete solutions to the workload problem.
I think we are on the throes of having concrete solutions, and we have during the last 6 to 8 months been working very closely with a fair number of frontline staff to develop workload guidelines on both child welfare and income support. And my feeling is that if we didn't have this particular event in front of us, we would probably be able to address them fairly realistically.
Well, you sound as though you're optimistic, but still we do have a strike situation on our hands and people on the picket line, and clearly there doesn't seem to be an end in sight to this dispute. What's it going to take? What's the breakthrough? I guess that's what I want to know.
I guess the signal that is needing repetition is that I, as the Deputy Minister, wish to resolve this problem. And staff know very well that I have put an awful lot of energy into this kind of issue. You comment on multiple years' discussion. I can only relate to the last year and a half, and I think we've had some very fruitful discussions.
But not fruitful enough, though. Those people are still out on strike, Mr. Remple.
You can't have these kinds of issues resolved without purposeful, constructive discussion. And I believe we have had that kind of a step, and we are at the threshold of being able to implement. And how far can we go during the time of the strike? I'm not too sure. Clearly it interferes. I'd like to get on with it.
Mr. Remple, I want to thank you for coming in and talking to us.
Thank you.
Back to you, Bob.